Hi. It's Danny Fleming.
And a few minutes late, Marcus Collins, because we were just finalising setting up here. But here we are
and he's scrambling, it's not me.
So here we are for our 2020-2021 real estate market review, market update, specifically for Lexington this evening. So
yes, we are going to be doing Arlington at 7 p.m. tonight. And if you've got a request for any other town, let us know and we'll definitely do one of those, because we have about 50 plus towns on our website that we have a data warehouse for. So we've got the information. We can absolutely show you this sort of stuff.
Yep.
So let's get going.
All right.
Why do we do this? So it's easy to get information and data today, but it's much harder to make sense of it and use it to your advantage. This is why we take time to explain and why we're serious about learning every data point in detail, and why we study the local markets so obsessively. We have a data warehouse. We've got all the data. So, what's the agenda tonight, Marcus?
We got me to do that. I thought I was going to do the introduction. There we go. All right. Okay.
He always says he hates doing the introduction, so I figure I always have to do it.
There we go. There we go. So, what are we going to talk about? Single-family homes, luxury market, condominiums, and then we'll take a look at where we are in 2021. Clearly, we've got 4 months. We're in 4 months into 2021. About 2 months worth of sales for properties that actually went under agreement in 2021. So that's useful, and you'll see that in a minute why that's important. And then we'll give our thoughts around how we see the rest of 2021 playing out at the end. So first of all, there's a lot of information we're going to show you this evening. And one question we always get is, so where can I find this information? So some of it is based on this document, and I have one actually here. There it is, a handy dandy Lexington Market Review for 2020 and 2021. We produced this back in January without really knowing quite what 2021 was going to bring for us. But there's a lot of information there about 2020. Pandemic, lockdown, all of that, and you'll see some of that shown out in the data we have today. So that's the first place you can get that. It's on our website. If you want a hard copy, say we have lots of them. So just reach out to us and we can definitely get you a copy of that. Now we're actually into 21. There's a lot more information clearly that we want to talk about what's happening today. And you can find that on our website. So if you go to maproperties.com/statistics, there's lots and lots of stats there, and we'll cover many of those in the conversation that we have this evening.
Okay.
Single family?
It's exciting.
Single family. By the way, I have a new toy, and I changed it a little bit from last night. So we'll see. Single family homes.
With that.
I'm a techie. What can I tell you? All right. So inventory levels. We've showed these graphs many times. Quick, kind of overview of what you're looking at here. Here's my new toy. Look at that.
Oh.
Look at that. Is that good or what? Right?
It was a big spotlight.
Yeah, no, I think I prefer this. So, here we are all the way from 06 to right up to date, from literally, what the inventory level was in April. Now, this is the inventory level. And
explain what the inventory level is.
Yeah, I'm going to do that because there's a little bit of confusion here between and people are using two terms synonymously, and that's inventory level and supply. And that's not the case. Inventory level is how much is in the warehouse. Not how much is coming into the warehouse, not how much is going out of the warehouse, is how much is left over when you kind of subtract what comes in versus what goes out. So it isn't supply. They are totally different. And many people get those confused. This is essentially a snapshot of how many homes are available to buy, actually when I do this on the first of the month. And you can see the crash playing out here. Where these very, very high inventory levels, all the way from 9, 10, 11, 12, actually all the way through to 12, that's the real estate crash kind of writ large. What happened is 13, much lower, buyer demand kicked in. And so the amount of inventory, the amount of supply versus demand, reduced because there was much more demand. And those low inventory levels continued. In fact, they dropped even more in the 18. There's a story to that. But as you can see, they rose slightly in 2019. If you remember back that far, which is a long time ago, but there was much discussion about were we going to go into a recession in that 2020 timeframe, before we knew COVID was going to happen. And that's why we saw an increase in inventory levels in 2019. So as you can see, this graph gives us a nice historical perspective, and you can see those kind of big items, those big systematic changes laid out in the inventory. Low inventory level in 2020, and looking at the graph, we don't have much to see. Realistically, low inventory in 2021 as well. Is that lack of supply? Is that too much demand? I mean, why are we seeing the inventory levels down? This is the number of home sales, the number of homes that actually sell. You can see a decline there from 2015 through 2018, flat into 19. We put that down to many Lexington residents deciding to age in place, stay where they are, not putting their homes on the market. Clearly 2020, something happened. Clearly COVID happened. And as you can see, a lot of homes came on the market and sold in 2020, upwards of about 25% more homes. So that we don't quite have this data yet. I can't really project out what those sales will be. We'll certainly have a go at doing that when we get to the middle of the year, but it's a little bit too early to project what we think the total sales will be. I'll do that in the middle of the year.
He's got some information on cumulative sales, which does show exactly what's going on. So
right. It does indeed. Historically, we've seen a sale price to list price ratio, which is the difference between the sale price and the list price. Imagine you come on at 1 million, you sell at $1 million, 100% sale price to list price ratio. Historically, it's been around about 100%, but sneak peek to what's happening this year, you can see, and I'll use my handy dandy pointer, as you can see throughout 2020, this orange bar here is the sale price to list price ratio. It's around about 100%. But
on average.
On average. Look what happens as we come now into March and April. And remember, a home that sells in March goes under agreement January or February. That's 6 weeks to sell a house, give or take 6 to 8 weeks. So homes that went under agreement in January and February closed at an average of about 105, I would say, give or take. Yeah. So clearly much higher than we've historically seen. You know, this is Arlington. These are Arlington numbers.
No, it says Lexington.
No, I know, but Arlington. What I meant by that was, I know it's Lexington. Right, Arlington, much stronger town than Lexington, lower price point, of course. Sees averages of around 105%. Lexington has never got to those dizzy heights, if you like, but it is at 105. Sneak peek for the next talk we're going to give. Arlington is double Lexington. It's about 110 during this time. So clearly something's happening here in terms of the number of the ability, the willingness of buyers to pay over asking. And I guess, you know, what's happening here is we've got very strong supply, and you'll see that in a minute with the cumulatives, but we've got even stronger demand. There's a huge amount of demand right now. And we've got story, and Danny will give you story after story about how many offers we get on a home, because the demand is, I don't think I've ever seen it at this level.
This is the strongest sellers market we've ever seen. And it's not just in Lexington, it's across the country too. What the pundits and what we've identified and things like this is that it's because of COVID, people are reevaluating what their priorities are and reevaluating what's important to them in life. Now, and also work situation, the fact that people don't have to commute into Boston anymore, even though it is going to be, you know, changing once we get more and more vaccinated. You know, the question is it going to be a fully on-board, on-site work environment again? Probably not. It's probably going to be more a hybrid environment, or it's going to be a fully remote in some industries. Our youngest son, Sam, he works at SpaceX. SpaceX is in LA. He moved over with his fiance in December of last year. Yep. He works completely remotely and will continue to do so. So some of the companies around the country are finding their productivity is increasing. They're not having to pay for expensive office buildings. So why not have a more hybrid model? But what that's allowing people to do is move to where it works for them to be, not where they're required to be from a commuting to work perspective. I mean, even just...
Before you do that, when we talk to buyers, we talk about three things as they're evaluating which towns and which homes to buy. It used to be schools, commute, how much can you buy for your money? Schools are still immovable. Schools are still important.
Yep.
Now they're beginning to compromise on the commute, which allows them to buy, guess what? More house for their money. So those three things, now they begin to reevaluate that second one, the commute, and that's what's kind of playing out here.
But it's interesting when you look across the country, you've got people thinking about moving elsewhere in the country too. I know we listed a home earlier this year in Acton. We had helped the sellers buy out there. We'd helped them to sell in Lexington, bought them in Acton. Then we listed their home earlier this year in Acton. They were moving to San Diego. Okay, they just made a choice, a life choice.
Acton, San Diego.
Let's move to San Diego.
I'm going to San Diego too.
But hang on. We bought a home on the market in Arlington about 4 weeks ago. You talk to them about what they're doing. They're moving to San Diego.
What is it about San Diego? It's a nice city, I should say.
Talking to someone in Lexington around that same period of time and talking about where you're moving. Moving to San Diego. I really want to know what's happening in San Diego.
Everybody's going to San Diego.
But where I'm getting at with that is that people are reevaluating. Maybe they just want warmer weather, and San Diego sounds like a great place to be.
But we've had Western Mass, people moving to Western Mass, Maine, New Hampshire. I mean, people are taking that choice to be able to move. You know, if maybe it's, you know, I would be in Lexington, for example, but I don't worry about the commute, so I want a little bit more house for my money. I'll move to a Concord or to a Carlisle. Or it's, you know what, I don't need to be here at all. I'm going to San Diego, apparently. Yeah. Or Maine. Or
somewhere down south.
Right, or somewhere down south.
But that's what's happening, we believe, with, all of the mobility of people around the country. Interestingly, though, when you look at Boston, the people who are looking to buy in Boston, 88% of them live in Boston already. So there's a lot of movement around Boston. That's not the case if you were looking at, say, Austin, Texas. You would find a lot of people moving from San Francisco, a lot of people moving from LA or wanting to move from those towns. Portland, Oregon, moving to Austin. Around Boston, it's a very local market. So which helps us for marketing that we do, because we're not having to advertise across the country.
Right.
Our primary buyers are all local.
Yep.
But where I was going with that...
Shall I continue?
You interrupted me.
Continue.
No,
okay.
But I was going to say something else.
I interrupted you, though. Normally you interrupt me.
Okay, I'll remember it in a minute.
All right, so sale price to list price ratio, average of 105. Unsurprisingly, that's having an impact on prices. This is average sale prices in Lexington historically from 2001. Blue is the historic numbers year on year, and then the green is a month by month. So don't worry too much about the peaks and troughs in that month by month. It can get certainly in January and February, it can get swayed by one or two high price transactions, but we are seeing an increase in that price. As I look at the data and I look at the distribution, that number is a little lower if we back out the change in distribution that we're seeing. But having said that, that is, still there is a definite increase in sale prices this year, and we see that too in the median as well. We see that definite increase in sale price, driven primarily because of that 105% sale price to list price ratio, multiple offers on homes, and therefore buyers being confident enough, and in many cases having to bid the house price up, and therefore pushes up prices.
Because they've missed out on house after house after house already.
Right.
And it's across all price ranges too. It's not just across sub $1 million. We'll talk about this a little bit further, but we are seeing extraordinary results with some demand. Here's an example, and this is a record. This is a record for us. We bought a home on the market for 1325. It's actually closing this week, but we bought it on for 1325. We had 148 private showings from the Friday morning to the Tuesday morning, which is when we were reviewing offers. So that's 148 serious buyers, because your serious buyers have an agent that they're working with. When a home comes on that they want to see, they're making an appointment to get in and see the home with a private showing. We ended up with 35 offers on the home, and it sold for 28% of asking price. I don't want to, I'm not going to give you the number, but it is closing this week. But that's dramatic. But where the important part with that is, and this was about 6 weeks ago, there were 148 private showings. There's still 147 back when we accepted the offer. There's 147 serious buyers still looking in that price range. So there's so many buyers out there all looking to buy, and there's not enough supply to mop up that demand. So this is where, you talk about, and you would hear about across the country, you hear about the pundits talking about how there's no inventory. Some of them are talking about no supply, but no inventory, definitely. It's actually not that there's a lack of supply, because as you'll see in a sec, there's a lot more supply this year. It's just we've got such huge increase in buyer demand. That's what's driving this. It's not because there's no homes. It's because we've got a huge number of buyers out there, and they're still not satisfied because there's still not enough homes on the market to take up that demand. So
that's having real consequences, though. Historically in Lexington, we very, very rarely saw an appraisal not come in at the offer price. This year we're seeing an awful lot of situations where the appraisal is coming in lower. And there's a couple of things going on. I think the appraisal process itself cannot cope with the change in demand. This is clearly an unprecedented time. So was 2020 for that matter. But the degree of the increase in demand this year is unprecedented. And the whole process of looking at comparable sales, and we've had appraisals where the appraiser has looked back at homes that came on the market and were under agreement in September 2020. That was a totally different market. You just have to look at the graph you see here. Even if let's assume this data is accurate and will continue, there's a much higher increase in pricing here than we saw between 2019 and 2020. And so the process of home buying, and certainly the appraisal process, beginning to creak at the seams, primarily because we've not had that many sales. This will work its way out of the system as the appraisers no longer have to look back to September. They can actually look back to January, February, March. It'll work its way out of the system. So it's having kind of implications for the housing market itself, specifically around appraisals.
And this is where it's really advantageous that we're busy agents. I mean, we're busy agents. We have, I don't even know how many we've got under agreement right now, probably 25 or 30 under agreement right now.
Listings?
I'd have to have a look. But what that does is it helps us with appraisals, because when we get an appraiser come in to do an appraisal on one of our homes, we can tell them how many offers we got, what the interest was, all of that sort of stuff. But we can also show them homes that are under agreement that nobody else knows what they've closed for yet because they haven't closed. We've got all of this background information of homes that are already under agreement for certain prices, and say, here, this supports the price that we're actually, that we got for this home, because the appraisers don't have that information. So it's hugely advantageous. We haven't had any challenges. I haven't had any challenges with appraisals, but our buyers have been. So, because I guess the listing agents don't have that background information. And one of the ways we should talk about this just a minute. One of the ways when you're a seller to protect against that is one of the requirements I have when we're in a competing offer situation is I want the buyer to add not subject to appraising at purchase price in the offer. So the offer that we're about to accept, it's most likely way higher than the asking price. I don't want any issues, even if there's no mortgage contingency. I still want that clause not subject to appraising at purchase price in the offer, to protect the seller about an appraisal issue further on down the track in case we get a dud appraiser. I shouldn't say that, but yeah, we get dud appraisers. So anyway.
So prices are clearly higher. It's interesting, and we started doing this last year, to look at cumulative sales. And so what I'm going to show you now is the cumulative sales, and it's actually mapped to when a home goes under agreement as opposed to when it sells, to take out that 6-week delay between. The cumulative sales between 2019 and 2020, assuming 2019 was a kind of standard year, at least it wasn't like 20 or 21. And as you can see here, there's two things to look at. First of all, at this point here, this, if you remember, was about 12 months ago. This is the lockdown. Where the number of homes that came on the market and therefore the number of homes that sold was depressed in that April, early May timeframe. But look what happened once we get to July. The number of sales in 2020 far and away exceeded what they were in 2019. And you can see this a little clearer in this graph. This is the difference between the two, essentially. And you can see that dip here in that April, May. This is lockdown, basically. This is the effect of lockdown on the housing market. Yeah. No sooner do we pull out of lockdown, the number of that difference between 2019 and 2020 disappeared pretty quickly, and then 2020 is off to the races at that point. Yeah. And as you saw back at the home sales, a lot more homes, about 25% more homes sold in 2020 versus 2019.
And that makes sense because we, as a team last year, we stopped the last homes we bought on the market were the last weekend in March, and we suggested to all our sellers who we were planning on bringing them on, subsequently. We said, let's wait. We need to wait. We can't come on at the market. The buyers, nobody's out. It's everyone's a little bit nervous about what's happening, the stock market, all of those sorts of things. Let's wait until it starts picking up. And it wasn't long before it started picking up. We bought our first home on the market again. After that, it was the first weekend in May. So it was only for a month period, but you can see that very clearly in this graph when you think about the last weekend in March through all of April, and then it started ramping up the first weekend in May. You can see that's when it all turned and started coming up again.
Right. Yeah. So here's 2020 versus 2019. Question is, of course, how is 2021 going to play out? Not so much against 2020. That was, so you can see the lockdown in here. It would give us a false view. But how does it compare to 2019? So here's the data 2019. We clearly have the whole year for 19. Just 3 or 4 months now of 2021. You can see that we are already up. And in fact, if you look at the difference, we are at 35 homes over what we would expect in a normal a 2019 market. And so when people talk about lack of supply, lack of inventory in the same breath, that's not true. This increase here, this is supply. This is more supply than we saw in 19. The big question is, and this kind of leads into the predictions, is which way is this graph going to go? Is it going to begin to flatten out? Have we kind of this bolus of homes come on the market early part of the year, and then it's going to get back to the status quo, and we're just going to remain, on the same trajectory as 2019, or are we going to see an increase in the number of homes, similar to what we finally saw in 2020, in 2021? I think more on that, in a moment. But that's kind of lays the framework for that inevitable question. That's great, Marcus, but what's happening in the future? Right, that's backward. It's at least year to date, but what's going to happen in the future? So that was the single family market. I want to touch a little bit on the luxury market. We define a luxury home as a home sale over $2 million. And this information, if you've read the market review, this comes right out of the market review. This is the 2020 data. As you can see, a lot more expensive homes, over 2 million, came on the market in 2020 versus 2020.
And sold.
And sold.
Came on the
yes.
market
and
sold.
And sold,
Yeah.
yes. Dramatic number. Primarily because we've seen a kind of, clearly this is the price distribution over a number of years, from 17 all the way through to 20. You can see a shift into that more expensive homes. Inflation will, of course, house price inflation will, of course, do that, but not to this degree. And we're finding, for example, new construction homes moving into that 2 million, in fact, moving into that 2 to 2.5 to 3 million. We're seeing a lot more new construction moving into those areas. So that shift in distribution is not just a consequence of general house price inflation. This is a deliberate, attempt by home buyers extending their homes, making their homes larger so they can sell at those price points, as well as developers moving in, building at that over 2 million and over 2.5 million price point. That's kind of what's playing out. If you look at how 2021 so far is comparing to prior years, here's the price distribution for the last 12 months. If you look at this in comparison to 2019, 2020, I should say, it looks very similar. So we're still seeing that once that distribution has been set almost, with that larger number of higher priced homes coming on the market, that looks to be the norm moving forward. So the distribution very similar to what we saw in 2020, different from 2019.
So a lot of people have the misunderstanding, a lot of people misconception, thank you. A lot of people think, oh yeah, it's a buoyant market for under $1 million or under 1.5.
Not just. It is, of course, but not only.
It is across all price ranges. Let's just sort of talk about the fact that just this last weekend, when Jen in our team bought on a home on Eldred Street, $840K, 22 offers on the home, sold for way over asking. I mentioned we've had a lot of homes between $1 and $2 million that have come on. Lots of offers with them all. As I was sort of saying, the record one. Hopefully, we'll have more records.
Village Circle was very high as well.
Oh yeah,
18 Village Circle we bought on.
Yep. I mentioned the Baskin Road home that came on at 1325 and had massive amounts of interest. We have another one coming on Baskin just on June the 3rd. So hopefully that'll be a record as well. But anyway, getting past that, 2 weeks ago we bought a $2.1 million home on the market. We had 14 offers on it. At 2.1 million, 14 offers. Let me tell you,
that's far higher than we've ever seen before. We've sold homes over $2 million for over asking, but never with that number of this is the number of offers. This is why this is very much 2021 is very much an unprecedented. Yeah, it's one for the record books, very much so.
And I'm currently getting ready to put a best and final in on a home that I'm working for some buyers. It's on the market for 2.7 and there's 9 offers on it. At 2.7, there's 9 offers. So this is not just sub $1 million or sub $2 million. This is across the whole price range that we have in Lexington. Mm-hmm. There is a huge amount of demand in every single price range, which makes it tough if you're a buyer, I have to say. I'm starting to talk to a lot of sellers who I just got off the phone just prior to starting this with a seller I've been talking to them for a couple of years about selling, and they've said, I think we need to sell now. We're going to find something to rent. That's important because to try and buy in this market, you might be overpaying. You might be paying more than what you need to pay if you were to wait 1 year or 2 years. We just don't know, but in this market, if you're relying on buying before you sell, that might be a challenge.
If nothing else, irrespective of the price, it's likely, and we're thinking about the downsizers here, you're looking to downsize from a larger home to a smaller home. Let's take the example of the house on Eldred Street this weekend. You're competing with 22 other people writing an offer. So it's tough to buy in this market undoubtedly, and we're hearing that from our agents too, that this is one of the toughest markets to buy a home, just because there is so much competition. It kind of plays out with everything we've talked about here this evening.
Well, that home in Acton that I just mentioned before, we had, I think, something like 18 or 22 offers on it. And that was back in the last week in January. So the buyers are all buying out, further out as well. Our son, at the moment, he's going through a best and final round on a home in Carlisle. There's competing offers. So it's not just Lexington that the buyers are experiencing this. This is
Across the board.
Across the board. So huge market. If you can find somewhere to rent or you've got somewhere else to go, take advantage of the prices that are here, because we're not going to see them again. I don't believe we're going to see them again. But let's get on to the next one, and we'll talk about the predictions and
right
stuff.
after that. So condominiums. We don't normally cover the condominium market, but there's a lot happening in the condo market. So we did it first time in detail this year, and it's quite interesting to look at it historically, what's happened, but also what's happening year to date as well. So here's the condominium sales. They fluctuate. Primarily, they fluctuate in this graph. I should say the blue is the existing homes, existing condominiums. In Pfeiffer Lane, Potter Pond, and those. Whereas the green are the new developments, usually in small clumps of subdivisions. The ones up by Estabrook School and so on. So it fluctuates somewhat. Primarily, it fluctuates because new condominium developments kind of come in periodically. What's interesting if we look at the sell price, it's still a good trajectory we've seen. It fluctuates a little bit though. If you look at the data for 17, 18, and 19, it kind of fluctuated. We did see a higher number in 2020, and now it's begun to drop down or at least stagnate. Compare that with the single family as we roll into 2021. Primarily, the increase that we're seeing is because of the new developments coming in though. So what I've done in the next one, and this was in the market review, is I backed out the new developments, and this is the average sale price for existing condominiums. As you can see, we've seen a net reduction in the average condominium price since 2018. I couldn't see over there; it's too far away. In 2018. There's a reason for this reduction, and then there's COVID that kicks in too. The primary reason for this reduction is the price of a condominium in Arlington and in Lexington is about the same price. The average price here is at $724. In Arlington, it's marginally lower, in the very high sixes. But the condominium fees in Lexington, if you think about the big developments, have in general much higher condominium fees than you would have in a double decker or a triple decker. And if you look at the averages, it's about double in Lexington versus in Arlington. So imagine a buyer is going to move into a condominium. They've got the option of an Arlington or Lexington at about the same price point, but guess what? $250 is my condominium fee in Arlington. $500 or even more is my condominium fee in Lexington. And so buyers are making a clear choice here. They're choosing to go with the lower condominium fees because at the end of the day, that allows them to offer more money, because that extra $250 a month in condo fees they could be using to pay off, they could be using to borrow more money at the end of the day, and therefore but get the condo that they want. So that's the big picture going on here. But I think your story about
But it's a little bit more than that too, though, I would think, because when you talk about Arlington and Lexington, Arlington has a huge supply of condos. Lexington's not known for condo sales. That's not a high proportion. We're a single family town. So when a buyer's looking for a condo, they're not necessarily looking here.
Right.
I mean, for instance, the weekend that I was saying that we bought the $2.1 million home on, and it was at 22 Douglas, that weekend where we got 14 offers on a $2.1 million home, we also bought a condo on the market. Fantastic location, adjacent to the bike path, town centre, really nice condition home, a condo, really nice condition condo. It came on the market at $760. We had 3 offers. the condo market is not as strong as the single family market.
And the other reason that, one, there is the condominium fee. Secondly, Lexington is not known as a condo town. But thirdly, COVID plays into this as well, of course. Yeah. We certainly saw this at the end of 2020. A lot of condominiums, for example, in Arlington came on the market, and it depressed the market for a few months there. And it's buyers looking at this thinking, do I want to be in a single family, or do I want to be in a condominium with shared space? Mm-hmm. And buyers made a very clear choice at the end of last year, and I think we're seeing it playing out this year as well, is that I would much prefer to be in a single family in my own space. I don't want the shared space. Yeah. Now, the other side of that, of course, is that condominiums are cheaper than single family in general. And so, they're torn between, yes, the shared space, but actually I can afford it. But I think we need to think about moving forward this, I need more space, I want my own space. That's where buyers' heads are right now. And condominiums don't necessarily tick all the boxes anymore, with the exception perhaps of a lower price than you get for a single family. And I think that's the kind of third factor in the condo market, the condo fees, the lack of condos, and therefore it's not known for condos. But then thirdly, that shared space is something that buyers are less.
I think that's exactly right, because when you look at it, and you look at, say, for instance, people who are renting in Cambridge or Somerville, things like that, typically their next move would have been to buy a condo in Arlington or maybe Lexington or Waltham or some of those towns around. But a condo, as Marcus was saying, is part of this revisiting what's important to the people who are out there now. And they're starting to reevaluate, and that reevaluation means I don't want to be in a shared environment, but I also don't need to be close to Boston. So why don't I, rather than buy a condo in Arlington, why don't I buy a single family out in Groton, or I buy a single family way out there? Mm-hmm. They don't need to buy, to do that stepping stone, because they don't need to be close to the town centre anymore.
You don't have to go that far. Average condominium prices, around about 700 in Arlington as well as in Lexington here. You don't have to go very far to get a sizable home or to find a town with an average sale price of 700,000. You don't have to go out very far. Yeah. Acton would do it, for example. Yeah. So you don't actually have to go a long way, and I think you're right. Buyers are saying, you know what, condominium in Arlington or Lexington, or single family in, for example, Acton, kind of following that Route 2 corridor. I think I'll go for Acton. So we've seen a lot more sales and a buoyant market in those towns much further out that historically were not as popular as they were much closer in, with a smaller commute.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, condominium market.
Wider
perspective. So what's going on in the big market? You may have heard this before from us. One of the big things that's going on is a demographic shift, if you will. This is some census data that is the number of people in each age bracket. It's from 2015. Hopefully we're going to get an updated copy this year or next year, as they've done the census. So two areas in that are important. The upper yellow bar here is the baby boomers, the children born just after World War II. They are now coming into retirement and therefore into downsizing time. So they are looking for a smaller home. The lower bar there are the millennials, the so-called first-time home buyers. And so if you think about lower priced homes, I'll pick on Arlington as an example, it's the next town from where we're sitting this evening, it's ideally placed. A downsizer living in a Lexington or a Winchester or a Belmont would be looking at Arlington saying, you know what, price points are right. It's got a good school system, so that's great for resale. I don't care today, but I care for resale. But it's close to my circle of friends, and guess what? It's close to Boston too, if I want to go into, when they open up the theatres and so on. So that's a great destination, and that's driving a lot of the market. Downsizers moving into smaller homes. Maybe not in Arlington, maybe they're moving to Maine or to New Hampshire or to Western Mass. We're seeing that as well. But that's kind of driving the market. The first-time home buyers coming into the market, that allowing those people in homes which are ideally situated for first-time home buyers, allowing them to move up the market, and kind of so this kind of cycle continues. So that's the big kind of picture of why we're seeing. You can explain a lot of the strength of the market here, not just in the area where we are, but in the greater Boston area, because of that kind of shift in demographics. It's interesting to look at mortgage rates too, and here's some information. The blue is historic, the green is the predictions, and they're predictions by the financial pundits, not ourselves. I wouldn't be that brave, although they're not very good at it. We've watched these rates, and I have to tell you, they are not great at predicting interest rates. But anyway, sorry, with the benefit of hindsight, they were really bad at it, actually.
That's right. It's always the benefit of hindsight.
Right.
Hey, we would have all bought lots and lots of homes in 2009.
Here we go.
When
Right.
the market was really depressed, and we'd be,
Right.
hindsight's wonderful.
Yeah. So interest rates are ticking up. We're upwards around 3.7, still much lower than we've seen historically, and much lower than where it will start to have a sizable impact on the buyers, their ability to pay. What's having a sizable impact on the buyers is the amount they have to pay, not the amount the interest rates. I mean, that's what's, if anything, restricting the market is, gosh, it's going to cost me that much to buy that house. I literally cannot afford it. I don't have the down payment. So that's what's going to be a limiting factor, not necessarily the mortgage rates, moving forward.
Yeah.
So predictions. Let's kind of get our crystal ball out. And so what's going to happen?
And we're probably going to disagree.
We might.
Just
That's okay.
just
We
to
always
say
do,
that
don't we?
now. We're probably just going to disagree.
So I always like to split this into buyers versus sellers, and kind of think about those two groups instead of kind of trying to bring them together as one. What we've seen is a huge number, as we've just
Buyers or
reiterated.
sellers?
Buyers.
Okay.
Buyers
You're
first.
talking buyers.
Buyers
Okay.
first. We've seen a huge number of buyers in the market. That's driven up prices, and for all the reasons that Danny explained, that's why they're now looking not just here in Lexington, but in other towns too. So a large number of buyers, driven primarily for the impact of COVID. COVID is kind of what's driving this. So we will continue to see those large number of buyers in the market. We're hearing anecdotal stories of buyers saying, I just can't compete in this market. But realistically, the number of buyers, whilst that kind of 5-10% may drop off, even if they do, the 90% is still much higher than what we've seen historically. So as we move through 2021, there's going to be very strong buyer demand. Now, rising prices means, guess what? Economics 101, rising prices, sellers jump into the market to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And so, we will see also, and we are seeing, a large number of sellers looking at this market thinking, maybe this is the time I should sell. I've been sat on the fence for a while. I wasn't really sure. Maybe I should. Maybe it's next year. Maybe in the year after that. Gosh, this is an incredible year. I really should be thinking seriously about putting my home on the market. And I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, which is it sort of plays into positives for the buyers as well, though, from that perspective.
Of course.
Because the more homes that come on the market, the more supply there is for the buyers, the more inventory there is for the buyers. And, there was 1 week, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, where we had 6 homes come on the market priced between 1.3 and 1.5. The buyers had choices then. The buyers in that price range, they had choices. So as we get more and more homes coming on the market, we will get a little bit easier for buyers. It's still not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination.
The other thing, of course, is that the buyers that have already bought are no longer in the market. Yep. So there are buyers who have bought, so the number of buyers is declining. I'm going to kind of put those in inverted commas. Not huge decline, but it is diminishing over time.
One by one,
right?
As they're successful.
So the absolute number of buyers will begin to decline. The number of sellers will begin to increase, and ultimately that means we'll get to some kind of status quo. I don't know. It'll be in 2021. I think we're looking probably further forward than that. But
if we had to, if I would anticipate we're going to see the remainder of 2021, we'll see if we agree with this, the remainder of 2021 being very similar to 2020, where there was pent-up energy throughout the remainder of the year. Even last year, we bought a home on the market the weekend before Thanksgiving. 18 offers on it. So I think we're going to
Historically,
see that.
we would never have done that, by the way.
Never.
Yeah.
But the buyers were out there.
Right.
So I believe we're going to see the same conditions occurring through the rest of 2021. Whether 2022 will have, I think it will lessen a little bit, but I think it's still going to be a strong market. I don't believe, this isn't a bubble. This isn't a bubble. This is not the economics of what bubbles are. This is not a bubble. What it is there's huge demand for buyers who are reevaluating what's important to them. That's not going to change, because of a certain, something happening and the bubble bursting. No, this is a condition that until the buyers get their housing in place for what is important to them, they're going to continue. The demand's going to continue.
No, I think
being
that's true.
there.
Yep. And you say this is driven by COVID. It's being driven by people looking at. I mean, I didn't used to commute on 95 or 93 every day, but I think it's fair to say the number of times I've driven on it in the rush hour, I would not want to do that every day. Yeah. Maybe I can do it once, twice a week, but certainly don't want to do it 5 days a week. So there is a kind of movement, I think, for employees to think, I don't want to work 5 days a week in Boston. I think what will also play out here is that organizations will start to reevaluate, do I need that high price office building in Boston? Yeah. I think the commercial real estate market has got a long way. The leases have to work their way out. Yeah. But as they do, companies are going to say, do I need 10,000 square feet in downtown Boston? Can I have 5,000 square feet a little bit further out? Because that's what my employees now want. So I think there's a long-term picture here in terms of the way the lifestyles will change. Organizations will reevaluate their requirements for commercial space, for example, and I think homeowners will kind of alter their lifestyle accordingly. So this might be an unprecedented number of buyers in the market today. But the shift that we're seeing is a longer term shift. We're not all going to rush back overnight. Yeah, we're not all going to rush back into the office, next week because we've all been vaccinated. That just doesn't seem realistic.
No. But I guess if you're thinking about selling in the next 6 to 12 months, do it now. Do it now. We know what the market's like now, and this is one for the record books. We are not going to see the sorts of prices that are being paid now for a long time. I wouldn't,
It will normalise. I mean, the number of buyers will begin to decline just by natural. As they buy something, the number of sellers will increase as they see house prices increases, and inevitably that economics 101, it'll start to stabilise. And that's where we'll get to. Perhaps not in 2021. Maybe it'll be early into 22, but certainly in the foreseeable future, it'll begin to kind of normalise.
But don't be. What we just said before about hindsight is wonderful. With interest rates and buying in 2009 and things. Sell now. If you want to sell now. Yeah. And you can, even if it's getting into a rental or something like that, and then work out your next purchase in a year's time or 2 years' time, but sell now.
So on that, sell, buy.
I don't, but it's a record market.
No, I think it is. Yes, it definitely is. Right, we've not seen this before. Yeah. We definitely not seen this before, and we've got enough information as we've kind of had 4 months, 2 months of home sales to see how this is going to play out. We could not have predicted this in January, but I think now we can begin to predict with far better reliability than we could have 1 to 2 months ago. Yeah. And as we get more data, so that these predictions, inevitably become more reliable. But we have enough information today to be able to give them with some validity.
So why do we do this? Why do we do these? These.
Why do we do this?
Well, it's because.
You can do these. You're good at these. I'm not very good at these.
So why we do these? We think that it's so important that our clients deserve to be the smartest smartest people at the closing table, and that we all benefit by becoming smarter about home buying and home selling. That's why we're trying to get this information out to people so that you know what's going on. It's not, I think it's, I'm going to sell in December this year. No.
We don't do, I think.
Yeah.
We try not to anyway.
Yeah. We've got the data to back it up, and we need to share the data so that you all are, you know what's going on.
Lots of information on our website. There are lots and lots, not just about the town of Lexington, but other towns too. We have about 50 odd towns. If you have any questions at all, we like talking about this, as you can imagine.
Gee, do we?
We do somewhat, yes. We have to close up in a minute, actually. We have to do another one pretty soon.
We're doing Arlington next.
Right. Any questions about what's going on in the market? You want us to talk through both, analytically as well as what you should do to get your home on the market. What's happening in the market? We'd love to talk you through it. So with that,
yeah,
we're going to say thank you for watching.
Bye, and thank you so much.
And
we look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.
Bye.